Just another video on the Cadillac trunk lid. This is the piece we cut out of here. Now we could cut a lot more out, but we take out a little bit at a time. Stop pattern, so I remember not to cut nothing off of this side right now. So we're making this side. So just to make sure our shape is, relatively where it needs to be, we're going to keep that. And again, everything else can be a little different, but this right here, this plane has to be exactly where it is so that it sits against the rubber on the car on that weird angle. You look at the car, it's this angle right here and it goes straight across, so it's almost like a 45. But as long as we do what Cadillac did, we should be good. So I said in a different video, I believe, about making these little strips so that I can get my shapes. Let's see if I can grab this. So this is about, half an inch, 5/8. Maybe it's wider, doesn't matter. But you can see what we did. So the first thing I bent was this end here to get this shape when nothing else was bent, so we had the right shape. Then I brought it over here and I put it against this. Now the piece I cut, this was all kind of rotten, so we took that piece and we matched it up to that and this in case it changes as it goes, which I'll show you after how it does. I left a little bit of a gap right there, like I said I would. So if this is welded right here, you can see how that's going to line up beautifully with this. If anything, it'll be a touch further away, but it's really, really close. Now, while I held this here with two hands, I took this piece and set it back where it goes, and it lines up really, really well. So then what we did, I probably knocked it in just messing around here with the camera. At this end, we made the same thing. So it's going to go under like this. But you get the idea. That's going to sit perfectly flush. We're going to lay it down, there we go, and then we'll have our little gap up there, just like the other side, so we have a little bit of play. And but not a whole lot of play. I was showing you too much. Now that I lined it up better, there's going to be a little bit. Now mind you, if you make that too big, that's okay. Once you put it all against this though, see I left a little bit of a lip here so that this will catch. So you can come as far as that lip or a little bit less, which is okay. And if you go where it's too big, well, you're going to have to trim it till it fits. Now the reason we made two of those and not one of those, let's come out to a clean spot here on the hood. So the profile down here and here is the same, and that's where the rubber sits on. But if you look at the back side, the profile here and here is almost the same, but this one, let me turn it. See, I can match up the bottom, or I can match up the top, but you can see how this space here is small, and that's because, see how big it is on one end, and it shrinks, which is how it all works. So what we'll do with this is you keep track of the measurement of this before it's all bent. That's the size of the steel at this end, and at the other end it'll be longer, it'll be that size. And then what I like to do is take these and I put my marks so I know how to bend my steel, and I basically bend it the same way in the bender, and I compare the angles till they're close. And both of these have pretty much the exact same angles. It's hard to tell because one, but I mean if you got a little bit of a tweak, you can give it a little twist. So what we'll do, like I say, this is all rotten up in here, so we're not going to fix that. But this is good up to here, and I know that because I put a light in, and then I got one of these mechanic mirrors, and I looked at the back. And when I got a light sitting in there, well, let me show you. If you got this far in the video without scrolling through, then you probably don't mind too much. As you can see, there's a little bit of surface, but that's going to be fine, so we're not going to worry about that. My light's a little strong. I didn't have it in there right. And basically, it's good till you get right to this edge, but it's still nice and thick. Like, I know I can weld to there. But if we weld and there's a soft spot, and I might do it anyway, after I cut this out, I might come up right to about here and cut this out just to be safe. Because here, like, it's kind of messed up, so we might have to come into the round a little bit. But it'll be easy to make a piece here separate and then make these separate. But all we want to do is make one long piece that looks good on each side, and the idea there, now I set it up so that here and here is really close to the same. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make my piece from here all the way to here. And once we weld that together, that's going to dictate where that line is no matter what. We'll do it on both sides. Once we get our two pieces welded in here and here, whatever we decide to do with this, now this doesn't seem to be rusty in the middle. I don't know why until we get past this line. So this little piece that looks complicated, we're going to slice that right here. And we're going to keep this little piece because it's really solid. We are going to cut it right in that drop. So I'm going to make sure when I make this piece that it's going to come, my finger's throwing us all out of focus, right into here. So we'll cut that off straight. Well, what I'll do is I'll put my piece in and then I'll draw a line, cut it, and then draw a line over both. So we can butt weld this piece right in. And once that's welded to this piece and it's welded here all the way across, that will have a little bit of a triangle shape. And then with all that weirdness going on there, that's like hard, right? It's like metal's floppy. Well, 18 gauge won't be, but a little bit. But with this shape in here, it won't be at all. And what we'll do, because the 18 gauge may be a little thicker than whatever they got here, maybe not, it's hard to tell. When I weld it, I'll favor the 18 and I'll keep like pulling my drops into this stuff and it'll be fine. And again, I left this here and it's just sort of hooked underneath. And we want to keep this gap. I might actually weld a little pin or something across here. Once we get it all welded together, and it'll just be sitting against this, but that's okay. Once that's welded, as long as it's sitting against this, it'll never move again, and that's where we want it to be. And then we can mess around with all this and not worry, because we're going to replace that skin anyway. And that was the other thing we talked about. Now that the hole is bigger, you can see that the skin inside, you can see where it's really good, and there's some surface, but I don't think it's, yeah, it's not too bad at all until you get out to here. You can see where it's pitted. So we'll come right about to the edge of the flashlight. That way we know we're in a good metal. And I'm going to mark this up here, basically up here, so that on the outside, I know how much of this to cut out. You can kind of see it there. And we'll go up about 3 inches. So that means, when you look at this, and it's going to suck, but we're going to bring this up. Now here, you can see this shape and it slowly disappears. We're going to have to bend that shape into our piece and put it in, and then kind of make this so that it'll attach to the new skin, and the new skin is going to go right from under this edge all the way across. But to make sure none of that moves, before we cut this out down here, the same idea. This will be in, that'll be in. We'll do the corners. When we put our new skin on, we'll ignore this, put our new skin on. That way everything's in place, and then when we cut that out, we can use the piece to create the shape. And again, I'll show you how to do that with basically on the end of a stump or a chunk of log. and with a hammer, and it's not a big deal. And then we'll just inset it in, weld it in. If this ain't perfect, I mean, we can do a little bit of filler work, nothing too crazy. But keep in mind, the whole car is going to end up with filler and primer and what have you pretty much all over. That's part of it. There's nothing wrong with using filler. You just don't want to... A good example is the bad way using filter. A guy might come in and grind all those rust holes away and just pack it with filler. Don't do that. It'll look great for a summer, and you might have issues. And generally, it's sooner as opposed to later. So now that we can see in there, that whole side, there's no rot or rust. It's just literally around the line. So even though that side looks worse than this side, once you get just past this, it's actually in better shape, which is good. But we're still going to cut it right on. How would I explain that? Should have took a marker. As soon as I put my finger in, it goes out of focus. But anyway, so here's our line. We're going to come up to here somewhere. Just to leave enough. As long as that line is there and we cut above it, it'll make it strong that it won't move and it'll stay straight. And it gives us something to butt weld our new skin to. And then our skin will come up. And when I bend this piece, I won't bend it to a 90. I'll bend it as far as, well, the brake will go. And that way, it's not real hard to put back together. Now, if you don't want to bend that, because it's a pain in the butt, and sometimes guys hate trying to pinch it back together, the other trick you can do is you bring this up perfectly flush where you want it to go. You do everything I did inside, and you can cut a strip similar to these that we've cut off. You can set your strip over top so that it doubles up over the bottom piece. And because they're slightly lower, you can see this nice round shape that's here from where it was bent. Well, that's where you would weld right in there, all three together, and you'd keep filling it. And then you can grind out the shape and it'll look just like factory. But there's a bit of grinding and it's kind of like sculpting. So you're in for a little bit of time, but it's totally doable. And if you're worried about grinding and this happens, which it will, keep in mind, you grind a little bit, run a straight edge. You know, you can even hit this with, say, a Sharpie, and then run a flat file across. It'll show all the highs, and then you can just kind of keep planing it out until they're all flush. But like I say, for me, I'd rather risk making the bend, squishing it, and if you squish it and get a few little dings or dents, so what? You can put a little bit of filler there. It's going to be a lot easier than trying to ground the steel. And we're not talking enough filler to ruin anything in any way. You know, we'll be using it the way the factory would use it, which is kind of all over, but as thin as we can, where everything still looks flat. Anyway, thanks for watching. Cheers.